President Biden brings back MeToo witch hunts on campus, the TikTok ban advances, LGBT media goes full DELULU, and a TikToker gets roasted for her absurd victim story. All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my new daily series where I cover the craziest things on the internet and in our politics from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around. And if you're a returning viewer, don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts as we go along, because I'll read a few of your comments on the next episode, and at the end of today's episode, a few of your comments from yesterday. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the Biden administration's big changes for due process on college campuses. Biden's Department of Education just unveiled sweeping changes that will bring back Me Too mob justice on college campuses and undermine students' due process rights. We've got reporting here from Reason. On Friday, the Biden administration unveiled final Title IX regulations nearly 2 years after the administration proposed dramatic changes to how colleges handle sexual assault allegations. The new rules largely mirror proposed regulations released last year and will effectively reverse Trump-era due process reforms. So some context here, guys, is that before Trump was president, in the Obama era, we had this system of justice on college campuses for litigating accusations made between members of a campus of some form of sexual misconduct that was really turning into kangaroo courts. There was very weak protections for due process. Oftentimes, you wouldn't be able to have a lawyer involved. You wouldn't be able to confront or cross-examine your accuser. The burden of proof required was very low. And so we saw all these insane horror stories of students having their lives turned upside down in these really frivolous cases, or in cases where the accusers simply didn't have much proof or evidence, going against the traditional American values of the presumption of innocence and due process, which in many cases at public colleges are constitutionally guaranteed to us. So when President Trump was in office, his Department of Education put in place reforms to enshrine due process and protect the rights of the accused, while also ensuring that complaints were taken seriously and victims were respected. But Biden is rolling back many of these changes, eroding due process rights, and restoring mob justice on campus. More details here from Reason. According to the final regulations, accused students will lose their right to a guaranteed live hearing with the opportunity to have a representative cross-examine their accuser. This is accompanied by a return to the single investigator model, which allows a single administrator to investigate and decide the outcome of a case. Think about this for a second. We're talking about students being expelled and branded as rapists, a career-changing and life-ruining series of events. But of course, one that is deserved if they are guilty. Yet they're not even going to have the right to have a live hearing or be able to have a lawyer enshrined. They might not even get that in the process of them having their life turned upside down. Which again, to be clear, if they're actually guilty, then good. But when the stakes are this high, you have to have basic fairness. So too, this whole single investigator model is really, really unfair. Imagine in a criminal context, would you ever have a prosecutor who is also the judge and the jury? No, you wouldn't, because that's not fair. It's a real conflict of interest. It actually gets worse, though, these new changes. Reason reports that under the new rules, most schools will be required to use the preponderance of the evidence standard, which directs administrators to find a student responsible if just 51% of the evidence points to their guilt. Schools are also no longer required to provide accused students with the full content of the evidence against them. Instead, universities are only bound to provide students with a description of the relevant evidence, which may be provided orally rather than in writing. This is the part of the whole thing that I find the most disturbing. Schools are going to be required to use a standard of the preponderance of the evidence, which, guys, that's a low bar of proof. That's what's used in civil contexts when all that's at stake is money being changed, not people's lives being ruined or being branded as guilty of what is basically criminal offenses. Think about this for a second. Under this standard, all they have to do is be 51% sure that the student actually did the thing they're accused of, and they'll be expelled. Even if they think there's a 49% chance they didn't do it. That's crazy. That's not justice. Now, part of the reason that these systems have emerged is because our criminal justice system has failed, and these systems are kind of filling in the gap, but they don't actually have the protections of our criminal justice system. So we also need to talk about how we can make law enforcement be more receptive and take more seriously the complaints of women and victims of these heinous crimes, because what happens too often now is that they report them to the police, but the police don't take them seriously and they never bring charges, and the evidence is not processed in a timely manner, and all this stuff that is so horrible and so unfair to victims of these heinous crimes. But the solution is to get them justice in the proper way, not to undermine protections for the rights of the accused. This is why the Nonpartisan Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, which, disclaimer, I do some consulting work for, has condemned these new regulations. FIRE said in a statement, "Justice is only possible when hearings are fair for everyone. So today's regulations mean one thing. American college students are less likely to receive justice if they find themselves in a Title IX proceeding. When administrators investigate the most serious kinds of campus misconduct, colleges should use the time-tested tools that make finding the truth more likely. But the new regulations no longer require them to do so. Rather than playing political ping-pong with students' rights, the Department of Education should recognize that removing procedural protections for students is the exact opposite of fairness." Now, some victims' rights advocates are praising the Biden administration's decision and support these new regulations, and I want you to hear their side of the story as well. "Students who experience sexual violence or discrimination shouldn't have to weigh our safety against our ability to go to class or participate in campus life," said college student Emily Bach in a press release from Know Your Title IX, a campus sexual assault awareness group. The Biden administration's updated Title IX rule will make sure that students who experience harm can come forward and seek support without jeopardizing our ability to graduate on time or get a degree. This statement was really puzzling to me for a couple of reasons. One, to be clear, I completely think that we have to take any student who comes forward very seriously, and we should accommodate them however they need, right? Whether classes need to be reassigned so they're not in the same room as the person that they've accused of harming them while it's all being litigated, whether they need some accommodations, like I completely say take them 100% seriously, treat them with respect and dignity in any way imaginable. But what does that have to do with undermining the rights of the accused? How does denying accused students the right to have a lawyer present make you more able to go about on campus? How does lowering the bar of proof to essentially a coin flip make victims more likely to graduate on time? I genuinely don't get it, and I have compassion with all of my heart for victims and for their advocates, but I can't get on board with their push to advance the rights of victims at the expense of basic fairness and due process. I want to include a specific example, and guys, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these that have been documented and in many cases litigated in lawsuits brought against the universities, of the real people whose lives have been ruined by this disastrous system. Reason's Robbie Suave and Christian Beritsky have reported extensively on one of these cases that happened at Colorado State Pueblo. Colorado State University Pueblo has reached a settlement in a lawsuit brought by Grant Neal. Neal is the athlete who the university expelled for allegedly raping a fellow student, even though that student told school officials, quote, "I'm fine and I wasn't raped." Neal's troubles began in the fall of 2015. When he and a fellow student and athletic trainer, identified only as Jane Doe, had repeated consensual sexual encounters. Relationships between trainers and athletes were frowned upon, though not prohibited, so the couple tried to keep their encounters covert. News of their relationship eventually leaked out, however, and quickly escalated into a probe by the school's Title IX investigator, Roosevelt Wilson. Wilson, who interviewed Neal multiple times, never advised Neal to seek legal counsel, gave contradictory instructions on contacting Doe, and refused to hear from witnesses who supported Neal's version of the events. None of this, unfortunately, is out of the ordinary for Title IX investigations. What was out of the ordinary was the alleged victim's repeated statements that their sexual encounters were consensual. At one point, she told a college administrator, "Our stories are the same, and he's a good guy. He's not a rapist. He's not a criminal. It's not even worth any of this hoopla." Nevertheless, Neil was expelled for his alleged misconduct in December 2015, an event that cost him numerous scholarships and has prevented him from being accepted to other schools. This story is so disturbing, and it's just a perfect example of the kind of injustices that occur when you have systems that fail to protect due process and the rights of the accused. We should expect Biden's new regulations to get challenged in court, and I, for one, hope that they're struck down as the unconstitutional violations of our due process rights that they are. We can still get justice for victims without trampling on people's rights. All right, guys, I'll leave it there on that one. Let me know what you think. Do you support these new regulations, or do you agree with me? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're finding this episode interesting. Up next, a ban on TikTok is about to pass, and nobody's even noticing. A huge foreign aid package with tons of taxpayer money for Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and other stuff just passed the House, and they will now send it to the Senate, which will probably have to vote it up or down and just vote on all of it, yes or no, because they're in a rush to get money to Ukraine specifically. But slipped into that is the de facto ban on TikTok that the House recently passed. What does banning TikTok have to do with foreign aid money? Good question. Absolutely nothing. But the House passed this, and then the Senate wasn't really taking it up, and it looked like it might not get through the Senate, so they're trying to just slip it quietly into a must-pass foreign aid package and exploit the system to get something passed, even though if they actually voted on it, maybe they couldn't get it passed. Here's some more details from CNN. Senators could try to strip out the TikTok legislation, but policy analysts view it as unlikely. Quickly approving the foreign aid is a top congressional priority, and if the Senate were to pass the package without the TikTok bill, those changes would have to be approved by the House, further delaying matters. It seems more likely for the Senate to consider the entire package in a single up or down vote, which is precisely what House Republicans appear to have wanted. Remember that while this legislation claims that it's not a ban, it just forces TikTok to sell its ownership, it actually is a ban because they are not able to sell their ownership, right? That's blocked by China's rules on exporting algorithmic technology. So it's a ban. They're going to silence hundreds of millions of Americans who use the app to communicate their ideas and receive information, all over nebulous, vague, and largely hypothetical concerns about data security that are kind of moot because the Chinese Communist Party can already buy data on however many Americans it wants that's sold on the open market by all these different companies. But here's the thing. Maybe you disagree with me on banning TikTok. Maybe you support it in good faith, and we can agree to disagree. We should all be able to agree that they shouldn't be doing it like this. They shouldn't be slipping it in as an unrelated rider to a foreign aid package that people are desperate to pass. They're trying to work around our constitutional order and the way our system's actually supposed to work, where representatives can vote and be held accountable for their positions. And it puts lawmakers in a really crappy place, because if they want to support foreign aid, but they don't want to vote to ban TikTok, they are really stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's not good government. It's deeply, deeply sinister, especially when what they're doing, the legislation they're sneaking through, is something that's arguably unconstitutional, that can and will be challenged in court on First Amendment grounds. They're exploiting the urgency of foreign crises to jerry-rig the legislative process and get arguably unconstitutional legislation quietly passed while nobody notices. That's just a disgrace, if you ask me. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Even if you support banning TikTok, can you see my point, guys? Don't forget to hit that like button. And now it's time for DELULU Epidemic, where I spotlight the people who are letting their stupid show. Today, did you know even weather is homophobic now? Yes, the LGBT media outlet The Advocate says climate change has a bigger impact on LGBTQ+ couples than straight couples. Here's how. Now, I read this idiotic article so that you don't have to, and here's the takeaway. Apparently, LGBT people are more likely to live in coastal areas, and coastal areas are more likely to be affected by climate change. So they're saying that climate change uniquely targets and disproportionately hurts the LGBTQIA plus Wi-Fi password community. This is ridiculous. It has nothing to do with them being LGBT. It's just a quirk. It's just a coincidence that they happen to live in more coastal areas. When you say it affects LGBT people, that implies some sort of discrimination or targeting or animus, not just a pure coincidence. I mean, let me explain how absurd this logic is by putting it in a different context. What if I told you that for whatever reason, people with orange hair happen to live in more coastal areas? And because climate change affects coastal areas more than inland areas, would we then conclude that climate change is ginger-phobic? No, we wouldn't. At least, not if we had two brain cells left to rub together. It's just annoying because these LGBT activist types are just so desperate to constantly twist themselves into pretzels with their mental gymnastics and find ever and ever new ways to be victims. They actually did this with COVID-19. I don't know if you remember, but they put out all these hyperbolic reports with the same alarmist tone, claiming that COVID, a virus, right, which doesn't have any political views, disproportionately targeted and hurt the LGBT community. And when you looked into the details, the actual facts were that COVID was more likely to harm people who smoked cigarettes. For whatever reason, people in the LGBT community smoke at a higher rate than straight people. So they were claiming that COVID was anti-LGBT. And again, it had nothing to do with that. It's all just so ridiculous, and it's just part of this boy who cried wolf game that actually hurts the community's ability to call out genuine bigotry and hatred when it does still occur. To the woke LGBT media, I have a simple message. Your DELULU is showing. All right, up next, it's time for Brad vs. TikTok, my series where I react to the craziest and cringiest ideas from the Clock app. Today, a TikToker is getting dragged even by the TikTok users, who are usually very sympathetic, for her absurd victim story. Don't forget to hit that like button, and now let's take a listen.
So I wanted to come on here and talk about something that is really starting to annoy me. So I applied for a job at TJ Maxx a few weeks ago, and they denied my application. They couldn't even call me. They just sent me some automated email.
Gee, I wonder what it could be that a company doesn't want to hire you in a customer service position dealing with women and children. What could it be?
So I went in today and I was like, so what was the reason I didn't get hired? And she was like, oh, like, you just, like, don't have enough experience. There was candidates that had, like, more experience than you. And, you know, I asked her if it was about my tattoos, obviously, because I know a lot of places don't like tattoos. She said that wasn't the reason. I don't feel like that's true. But
okay, is it just me, or is it kind of like wild and entitled to like march in and demand to know the reason you weren't hired? Like, you don't have a divine right to a job somewhere and they didn't pick you. I'm sure they got lots of applications. If anything, that attitude would have been a red flag for me that would have made me not hire you, even if I didn't care at all about your tattoos and piercings and all that stuff, which, you know, I want to say, I don't care. Your body, your life, you do you, but they are very aggressive.
But whatever, I'll leave it at that. So I'm just wondering how, like, teenagers and young adults who haven't had a job before, how are they supposed to get employed if these places are only hiring people with experience? So younger people just can't get a job because they haven't worked enough?
So here's the thing. I don't think it was actually about the experience. I think it was about your tattoos, about your piercings, and about some of the things that you post on social media, which we will get into. Because there's actually been labor shortages in a lot of these places, and it does depend on what part of the country you're in, but I don't think for a lot of young teenagers, it's really very hard to get a part-time job. But most of them haven't done all that to themselves.
So, like, they'll deny a 16-year-old a job because they don't have enough work experience? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I do okay with money as is, so I didn't, like, need the job, but I would have liked it to have made some extra money so I could pay off my debt quicker. I want you guys to talk about in the comments what it's been like for you finding a job recently, like if it's been easy or if it's been difficult, and I want to know like what kind of experience you guys have, because I want to see if I'm the only person that's like experiencing this right now or not. And, you know, I hate that my tattoos are such a defining factor for me getting a job or not. Like, just because I have tattoos doesn't mean I'm not gonna be a good worker. Like, I do not understand that at all.
So here's the thing, I actually agree with this. Like, just because you have a ton of aggressive tattoos doesn't mean you wouldn't be a good worker. You might be a really hardworking person, you sound like you want to hustle, you want to pay off your debt, and I respect all of that. Personally, for me, it wouldn't bother me that much. I would not mind so much, but I do think you have to be realistic as an adult when you're going and getting face tattoos, when you're getting, you know, the bull nose ring like the bulls have, right? When you're doing all of that, you had to have known that that could potentially affect your ability to get this kind of job that's customer service facing. Like, it is on you as an adult to think through the logical consequences of your actions and then weigh the costs and benefits and make a decision. But if you don't do that, if you just willy-nilly go and do something like this without considering the consequences, and then you expect us to feel bad for you, I don't know. It's not really going to happen, at least not for me.
Because quite literally, some of the most smart, intelligent people I've ever met are people with tattoos and piercings.
Sure.
I could be wrong, but I've seen that, like, in Europe, like, people with tattoos and piercings can get jobs, like, way easier there. So why is America not hopped on the bandwagon? Another thing, too, is, like, all these places, they say that they're hiring, but I feel like they're not. Because I shop at all of these stores and I see hiring now signs, but those signs have been up for months, and I know plenty of people are looking for work. So how have they still not hired people? Sorry for the long ranting video, but I just feel like this is something that needs to be talked about. It's so annoying. And for anyone that is looking for a job right now that is younger and doesn't have experience, I truly wish you the best of luck, because it is very hard out here right now.
So the thing I loved about this video is that normally the audience on TikTok is like super woke, super sympathetic to people's like identities and marginalization and victimhood and all that. But even they were having absolutely none of this chick's narrative. LOL, you scare the kids. Tattooer here, it's probably the tattoos. HR supervisor here, there is no way any company would put you in front of customers like TJ Maxx. I want to be this DELULU. I worked at TJ Maxx and they will hire just about anyone that comes off the street. It's definitely the tattoos and piercings. Have you tried piercing or tattoo shops? There's a reason that tattoo artists refer to face tattoos as career enders. I don't think it's because you have tattoos. I think it's where you have the tattoos. Choices have consequences. It's your tattoos and your energy. I just love that even TikTok wasn't having this chick's BS. And again, we just have an epidemic of people who are unwilling to accept the consequences of their decisions. But baby girl, that's part of being an adult. And I will also note that the reason they may not have hired you, sweetie, is because they probably did a social media check and found that you post things like this to Instagram. Now, as a gay guy, I was a little bit traumatized by viewing this photo, but it's your body and your life. Like, post whatever you want. Knock yourself out. You then can't act shocked or surprised when prospective employers look up the fact that you're nude all over the internet and don't want to hire you. Again, it's just the predictable consequences of your own actions. But after all of this was pointed out to her, she responded with a video just further playing into her notion as a victim and also giving more of this very off-putting energy.
Wow, it's not even 7 a.m. I woke up and read the comments on my video and I have a lot to say. You guys missed the point of that video entirely. I don't need that job at TJ Maxx. I make plenty of money. If I didn't make enough money, I would not be able to afford a Dodge Challenger that has a almost $500 monthly payment.
Did she just try to flex on us with a Dodge Charger? I mean, that's perfectly a fine car to drive, but like, it's not your Lambo, baby girl. And taking out a car loan with a car payment is also not a financial flex, because people who actually have money buy their cars. They don't take out loans with huge amounts of money just going to interest.
I have thousands of dollars worth of artwork on my body. I have $7,000 breast implants, and I have about $3,000 of filler in my face.
Oh, this girl's testing me so hard because y'all know I have a rule of not commenting or making fun of people's looks. But all I'm saying is that personally, if it was me, I would want a refund.
And it's crazy. It's like, you need to have money to do those things. I just wanted the job
Stop bragging.
to make more money, because what's wrong with wanting to make more money?
Okay.
But, I posted that video because I knew I was going to get exactly those kind of reactions. And there's people saying, oh, it's because of your satanic tattoos. So if it is about my satanic tattoos, that's religious discrimination, which it's illegal to discriminate against someone based off of their religious beliefs. And appearance has nothing to do with work skills.
Okay, so actually she might have a point about the religious thing, although they could argue that it's not the religious element of it, it's the scary and aggressive nature of it and positioning of the tattoos. And again, yes, tattoos have nothing to do with work experience, but your appearance and presentation for a customer service role is relevant. I'm just honestly impressed by the extent to which she's still convincing herself that she's totally the victim here.
Other comments that I noticed is people said that I voted for Biden. I haven't voted before, and I would never vote for him. And people are like, oh, well, leave America.
What does that have to do with anything?
Once my husband is out of the military, that is our plan. But, since he has a military contract to serve out, we can't just leave quite yet.
Okay, bye. Don't let the door hit you. I'm so sick of all these TikTokers crapping on America and saying how bad it is and how much they want to leave. Like, go then. Go. Once again, I think we should buy people with taxpayer money, buy people like this a one-way ticket on the condition that they can't come back, and we're going to give their citizenship to a hardworking immigrant with skills in STEM or something that wants to come to this country and contribute and won't play the victim all the time.
So funny, because it's always like older generations that say that younger people are the ones that get all triggered and stuff the most, when I think it's quite literally the opposite. And old people are in my comments saying that they're afraid of me. Good. I'm glad. I don't want to be around you.
So you are glad that old people are scared of you, but you're shocked that a company doesn't want to hire you for a customer service position. Girl, the math isn't mathing today.
Old people are quite literally the reason why the United States is in quite literal chaos right now. All of these politicians literally look like they're about to take their last breath.
What does politics have to do with this?
So, bottom line, everyone missed the whole point of that video. I don't need that job. I make enough money. So, yeah. I am gonna go enjoy my day getting some Starbucks and shopping.
Actually, girl, I don't think it's all of us who are missing the point here. It's you who refuses to take accountability for your own actions and is dedicated to constantly making yourself the victim while projecting this entitled, braggadocious energy that is really not it. I would just encourage you to do a little bit of introspection and maybe open yourself up to the idea that some of your critics might be onto something. But what do you guys think? Do you side with her or sympathize with her somehow? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button and maybe even consider subscribing and sticking around if you somehow got a kick out of all that craziness. Now, before we go, I'll read a couple of comments from yesterday's show. Somebody said, referring to the whole drama over a kid who said illegal alien, "Don't you dare call me an illegal driver. I'm simply an undocumented motorist." I'll pull that one out if I get pulled over without my license. Another person said, "Dogs are settler colonialists. Come on, wokeness is getting to a point where I just can't ignore and laugh at it. It really makes me depressed. I feel you on that one, dude, but you have to laugh, because if you don't laugh, you will cry. Another person said, one day when the woke cultists inevitably come after Brad, he'll raise his head in defiance, and with his last breath, he'll say, your DELULU is showing. And they'll know he won. You know, I will pull out that line, but they have come after me before. And that's one of the great things about being an independent content creator. It's a lot harder for them to get you. Another person said, as a public educator, I have seen so many instances where students should legitimately be suspended and they are not, because administrators are too worried about lowering the school rating with high suspension rates. I guess this story plays right into the view that many teachers have, which is that administrators are far more concerned about image than doing what's right. Preach, honestly, and we need commonsensical people like you in charge of the schools and not these ridiculous administrators. Another person says, I really dislike people who record themselves putting on their makeup. I find it bizarre that they want their viewers to share their toilet with them. I don't mind it. I don't know. I find it kind of fun to like follow along with them as they do this transformation. Maybe because I'm like, I don't understand makeup other than a little bit that I do for the cameras, but I'm not like a makeup person. So it's kind of miraculous to me how much they can transform. And then when you're just talking to people and telling a story, it's good to have something visually going on to keep them engaged. So personally, it doesn't bother me. I actually kind of like it. Another person says, completely off topic, your bone structure is stunning. Why, thank you, good sir. For real, his face would be perfect if it weren't for the funny ears. LOL. But no, I didn't mean to sound mean. I think he is a gorgeous human. People always talk about my ears, but like only on camera. It's something about the camera that maybe makes them look weird. In real life, no one has ever thought my ears looked anything other than ordinary. Another person said, I love how you have segments with all different tones and vibes. Keep it up. That's what I'm going for. I want to mix fun and entertainment with some serious stuff and some serious commentary to hopefully brighten y'all's day, but also leave you a little bit better informed about the world and maybe make you think about some of my perspectives on things. Another person said, time to play. Let's guess his weight and height. 6 foot 1 inch, 170 lb. All right, I guess if we're playing this game, I'll tell you that it's higher. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for another episode of Brad versus Everyone, my new daily series. Don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts if you got a kick out of this episode, and maybe I'll even consider reading your comment on the next show. Don't forget to subscribe and stick around, and maybe even turn on those bell notifications. And with that, I'll see you all tomorrow.